One boy vanished at age 7, brainwashed, abused, and forgotten. The other stayed home, slowly losing his mind. What happened to the Stayner family is not just a true crime story. It's a tragedy of two brothers and the evil that grew in the silence. This is the forgotten story of the Stayners. One was a victim, the other became a killer. Merced, California, a small town where doors were left unlocked and kids walked home alone from school. It was a different world, or at least it seemed like it. It was a Monday afternoon, December 4th, 1972. 7-year-old Stephen Stayner was walking home from Charles Wright Elementary School. It was a route he took almost every day. That day, a car pulled up beside Stephen. A 39-year-old man named Irvin Murphy approached him, a soft-spoken, gullible drifter with a childlike mind. He wasn't dangerous himself, but he was being used by 41-year-old Kenneth Parnell, a convicted child molester who had recently befriended Murphy while posing as a church worker. Parnell had convinced Murphy that he was on a mission from God, that he needed a young boy to raise in a Christian environment. But that was a lie. What Parnell really wanted was a child he could manipulate and abuse. In later interviews and dramatizations like I Know My First Name is Stephen, Murphy recalled saying to Stephen, "Would you be willing to talk to my boss? He just wants to ask your mom about donating to the church." Stephen paused. He was cautious, but Murphy seemed harmless, helpful. And it was a different time. Children were taught to respect adults, especially those who claimed to be doing good. So, he agreed. Murphy led Stephen toward the car where Kenneth Parnell was waiting behind the wheel. That single decision changed everything. Parnell and Murphy didn't take Stephen to his home. They kept driving, out of Merced, out of his childhood, and into a nightmare that would last 7 years. Back home, panic spread. Stephen's parents called the police, volunteers searched the town, woods, and highways. Flyers were posted, news spread across California, but there were no leads, no trace, no answers. A whole town searched. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. But what no one knew then was that Stephen was still alive. Stephen had vanished without a sound, and for the next 7 years, no one would know where he was. As the world moved on, his family slowly crumbled. Child was breaking too, Stephen's older brother, Cary. We'll talk about Cary later, how he became a killer and what led him to it. For now, focus on Stephen. We don't want to confuse our audience or make things complicated. For 7 years, Stephen was trapped in a waking nightmare. Parnell didn't just abduct him, he stole his identity. He renamed him Dennis Parnell, told him his parents didn't want him, that they'd given him up, and as time passed, Stephen started believing the lie. Parnell didn't stay long in one place. He frequently moved across remote parts of California. He was also enrolled as Parnell's son, made to call his kidnapper Dad. No one questioned it. He was hidden in plain sight. What the public didn't know was that behind closed doors, Stephen was being emotionally and sexually abused. He was trapped, not just physically, but mentally, convinced his real family had abandoned him. He was too scared to run, too young to understand he was a victim. Sometimes Parnell left him alone for days. Other times he lavished him with gifts, a dog, candy, cigarettes. It was a cruel cycle of control. Love, then pain, kindness, then violation. As Stephen entered his teens, the abuse became less frequent. Parnell was losing interest. He wanted someone younger. And that's when Stephen made a decision that would change everything, not just for himself, but for another little boy. After 7 years in captivity, Stephen Stayner was no longer the scared little boy Kenneth Parnell had abducted. He was 14 now, and something had changed. When Parnell kidnapped 5-year-old Timothy White in February 1980, Stephen saw himself in the terrified child. He knew what was coming: the lies, the manipulation, and the abuse, and he couldn't let that happen again. In a remarkable act of courage, Stephen made a life-altering choice. Within just 2 weeks of Timothy's abduction, he waited for the right moment when Parnell was away. Then, seizing his chance, he escaped with Timothy. Through cold streets and unfamiliar roads, the two boys made their way to a police station in Ukiah, California. There, at the police station, Stephen didn't start with his own name. Instead, he pointed to the little boy beside him and spoke the words that would shock the nation. "I know his name is Timothy White. I'm not his father." That was the first crack in the story, and within minutes, the whole truth came pouring out. Stephen told the officers everything: his real name, how long he'd been missing, and what Kenneth Parnell had done. Thanks to Stephen's bravery, Timothy White was saved before Parnell could harm him, and for the first time in 7 years, Stephen Stayner was going home. After Stephen Stayner led 5-year-old Timothy White to safety, the police moved fast. Kenneth Parnell was arrested, finally exposed as the predator he truly was. Parnell was charged with kidnapping, but shockingly, not for the years of abuse Stephen endured. Why? Because the assaults happened across different counties, and prosecutors didn't pursue it. He served just 5 years behind bars. 5 years for stealing a childhood. Meanwhile, Stephen came home to a hero's welcome. He was 14, but in so many ways, still 7, frozen in the moment he was taken. The family reunion was emotional, but also complicated. Stephen's parents were strangers now. His siblings had grown up without him. He'd missed birthdays, holidays, a lifetime. The media couldn't get enough. Stephen's story was turned into a TV movie. I Know My First Name is Stephen. He appeared on talk shows, gave interviews. Everyone wanted a piece of the boy who came home. In one interview, when asked why he didn't run sooner, Stephen quietly replied, "I didn't know where to go. I didn't know how to get help." He also said things like, "I was scared. I forgot my real name after a while." Parnell, told me my parents didn't want me anymore. The world saw a hero, but inside, Stephen was still just a broken boy trying to find his way back. He drank, he dropped out of school, he felt like a stranger in his own family. He tried to move on, got married, had 2 kids, but the scars never fully healed. Then, in 1989, just as he was trying to rebuild his life, tragedy struck again. Stephen Stayner died in a motorcycle accident. He was only 24 years old. His funeral was quiet. The cameras were gone. The world had moved on. But the Stayner family had not. They had already lost Stephen once. Now he was gone forever. And while one chapter closed, a darker one was about to begin. 2 brothers. One was a victim, the other became a killer. Stephen's story had ended, but Cary's was just beginning. Stephen saved a life, but no one could save his. Do you think the trauma ever truly left him? And if you had to describe Stephen Stayner in just one word, what would it be? In Part 2, we dive into the chilling descent of Stephen's older brother, Cary Stayner, the Yosemite killer. When Stephen was rescued, the world cheered, but there was someone in the background, silent, watching, his older brother, Cary Stayner. While one brother became a national hero, the other was unraveling, not overnight, not publicly, but slowly and in terrifying silence. Even before Stephen was taken, Cary was struggling. Cary Stayner was Stephen's big brother. At the time of the abduction, he was 11, but while the family grieved and searched for Stephen, Cary was quietly losing himself. He suffered from trichotillomania, a compulsion to pull out his hair. He became withdrawn, awkward, and deeply insecure. And no one intervened. He later admitted that even as a child he was plagued by dark fantasies, sexual, violent urges he couldn't control, but no one noticed because all eyes were on the missing boy. Years passed. The world searched for Stephen, and Cary faded further into the background. Cary Stayner grew into a man, tall, quiet, polite. To outsiders, he seemed ordinary. He held down jobs, painted wildlife, and spent his days hiking the Sierra Nevada trails near Yosemite. But inside, Cary was building a secret world full of violent sexual fantasies. He dreamed of abducting women, of controlling them, of ending their lives. He later said these thoughts were constant for years. He never got help, never told anyone. And as the years passed, those fantasies stopped being just thoughts. They became plans. In the late 1990s, Cary landed a job as a handyman at the Cedar Lodge near Yosemite National Park. Tourists came and went. He kept to himself, cleaned rooms, did odd jobs. But inside room 509, he was waiting. That's when it began. In February 1999, 3 women arrived in the Sierra Nevada foothills: Carol Sund, her 15-year-old daughter Julie, and Julie's best friend Silvina Peloso, a 16-year-old exchange student from Argentina. They were visiting Yosemite National Park, enjoying a week-long trip before Silvina returned home. Their final stop was the Cedar Lodge Motel in El Portal, room 509. Cary Stayner worked there as a handyman. He saw them check in. He watched them, and sometime on the night of February 15, 1999, he made a decision. He approached room 509 carrying a toolbox, told them he needed to fix a bathroom fan. Carol Sund opened the door. Once inside, Cary pulled a gun. He ordered the women to the floor, tied them up with duct tape, covered their mouths. There was no screaming, just confusion. Fear. He led Carol and Silvina into the bathroom, strangled Carol with a length of cord, then did the same to Silvina. He put their bodies in the trunk of the rental car. Julie Sund was left alive, terrified, bound, and completely at his mercy. Cary later admitted he spent hours with her, committing acts too disturbing to speak aloud. Then he killed her too. He slashed her throat and placed her body alongside the others. He drove the car deep into a wooded area near Long Barn, California, set the vehicle on fire with all 3 bodies inside, trying to erase the horror he had left behind. For weeks, no one knew what happened. The women were declared missing. Search efforts swept across California. On March 18th, a hiker found the burned-out car. Inside were the remains of Carol Sund and Silvina Peloso. Julie's body was found days later, discarded in a separate location, wrapped in a blanket. The murders shocked the nation, but there were no suspects, no fingerprints. And Cary Stayner? He calmly returned to work, quiet, helpful, watching. July 1999. 26-year-old Joey Ruth Armstrong was a naturalist living and working in Yosemite National Park. Passionate about nature, she lived in a remote cabin near Foresta, preparing to visit friends that weekend. But Joey never arrived. Rangers found her car still packed. The next day, her decapitated body was discovered in a nearby creek. Her head was found several feet away. Unlike the earlier killings, this time, there were witnesses. A couple had seen a blue vehicle near Joy's cabin the night she vanished. That vehicle was traced to Cary Stayner. Just days later, Cary was found at a nudist resort outside Sacramento, calm, naked, and smoking by the pool. When the FBI approached him, he didn't resist. And that's when the confessions began. July 24th, 1999. Cary Stayner was arrested at a nudist resort just outside Sacramento. He was calm, naked, and cooperative. When officers questioned him, he didn't run. He didn't lie. He simply said, For the next several hours, Cary sat with FBI agents and laid out his crimes, one after another, in shocking, meticulous detail. He confessed not just to the Yosemite murders of Carol Sund, Yuli Sund, and Silvina Palazzo, but also to the killing of Joy Armstrong just days earlier. He said he had fantasized about killing since he was 7, that he wanted to see what it felt like to take a life, and that being around women, especially alone, triggered something dark inside him. In his own words, Cary claimed he was battling demons, but he showed no emotion, no regret. When asked why he murdered Joey Armstrong, he answered, "Because I could." In 2002, Cary Stayner was sentenced to death. He remains on death row at San Quentin. Some blamed mental illness. Others pointed to the trauma. But Cary Stayner wasn't confused. He was cold, precise, calculated. What do you think happened to him? Was Cary always like this? Born with darkness inside him? Or did something push him there? Was it his brother's abduction? The years of living in silence? Being invisible while the world searched for Stephen? Or maybe it was the family itself, too broken to notice what was growing right in front of them. No therapy, no help, just a quiet boy turning into a silent storm. Tell us in the comments, was Cary a victim of his environment, or was the monster already there, waiting? Stephen Stayner saved a child and paid with his life. Cary Stayner destroyed lives and never showed remorse. Even Timothy White, the boy Stephen rescued, died young from a pulmonary embolism in 2010. The Stayner family was never the same. 2 sons, 2 extremes. One remembered as a symbol of courage, the other, a symbol of horror. How does one family carry so much pain? How does one house produce both a hero and a killer? This isn't just a crime story, it's a human one, about trauma, silence, and what happens when darkness is left to grow.